We're beginning a new message series today, teaching series for the month. It's a new song, Community Church Practically Speaking. And the purpose of this series is just simply to look at the plan that New Song set out a couple years ago, and to take a look at who we are, what we're trying to do, and the plan, the strategy we have to become the church that God dreamed us to become not too long ago. And in just a second, I'm going to ask the ushers. They have these little business card size cards. I'm going to ask them to hand out to you in just a moment. And these cards on the reverse side have the statement of our vision, our values, but also the plan, the 4-step plan that I'm going to be reviewing over this next month. So if you wouldn't mind just handing those cards out, you can take more than one card, but everybody at least get one card. Just kind of put it in your pocket, in your purse, your wallet, wherever, and just maybe carry it around with you throughout this next month, so you know, okay, this is what we're all about. Take a look on the reverse side, and on the reverse side it says our purpose, and that's the unleashed, unrestrained, loving God, loving people, and then our plan. We're going to talk about these 4 pieces of our plan over this next month, just so we know where we are, what we're all about, and just reviewing and gaining some biblical underpinnings to that plan. So out of the gate, the first plan, this first piece of it, is extending God's kingdom beyond barrier and boundary. We set that up, and just to say that a part of what New Song is all about is being a part of God's kingdom and pushing it out into the world, beyond the church, beyond our walls, into our workspaces, into our family spaces, that just the embodiment of God's presence in our life. We want to push that beyond any barrier or boundary that we face. Another one you see up on the screen is we want to engage and encourage people who are seeking. We want to be the kind of church that just simply says that we welcome you in. If you are seeking, we want to engage you. We want to encourage you. You don't have to believe what we believe. It's just all about trying to help people who are seeking something in life of God's presence. And they may not even say God. But we want to be about helping our students, helping people who are in our homes, people who are in relationship with those who are seeking. We want to help you develop a sense of engaging folks and encouraging them as they seek, very much like Jesus did. Another one is to develop and deploy those who believe. We believe that every person who is a believer has a place in God's kingdom. That you have gifts, and you have talents, and you have abilities, and you have passions. That we can use those to develop people, to strengthen the church, and certainly to draw people close to God's love, and God's grace, and God's forgiveness, and God's hope. And if you're like me and you look around the world, there are people in school, people at work, people underneath your own roof that need some hope, that need some renewal, that need some grace and strength. And then finally, another one is we want to honor and welcome all people. We want to honor and welcome all people. Jesus was all about this. Doesn't mean we will always agree with lifestyles and choices. Doesn't mean we will always accept everything that occurs. But a child of God, no matter what they do, no matter what they say, remains a child of God. Jesus died for all his children. We're trying to help them come back home. often when I write an email or send a note to somebody that's not a part of New Song, I will often put a tagline. It's really not our official tagline. It's like my official tagline for New Song. I tell people that New Song Church is trying to welcome people home to God. We'll teach biblically. We try to help people live a biblically honoring life. We'll try to help people devote themselves and become Christian. We will do all of that, but first and foremost, we have to look at people authentically and say, we welcome you. We honor you. Even when we don't always agree. And that should be easy because even in the body of Christ, we don't always agree. So these are the 4 parts of our plan. They are not in order of importance. They're all the 4 corners of the building, if you will. We want to take God's kingdom and just extend it out. And when we meet a barrier or a boundary, we want to kick it down. One time Jesus said, I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring sword. Sometimes the kingdom of God needs to be strong and just push past the boundaries. We want to be all about engaging and encouraging people who seek. Seek for a week. Seek for a month. Seek for 10 years. But seek to know God and who Jesus is. And we will engage you and we will encourage you. And we'll let you ask any question you want. One time Jesus was hanging around with some people of ill repute. And he was teaching them, he was engaging with them, he was even eating with them. And some of the religious people said, you shouldn't really hang around with those people. And Jesus simply said, it is for those people that I came, because they were seeking. Jesus defined himself. I came to seek and to save those who are lost. All of us have felt lost at one time or another. Develop and deploy those who believe. There is a time for people who are believers to get off the fence and get in the game. There is a time for us to figure out, am I fully engaged with this church, with this ministry, and am I going to make a difference in people's lives? Or am I going to enter the kingdom of heaven someday, having done a halfway job of using who God created me to be? Why not leave it all on the field? Where are you going to take it? Your skills, your talents, your passion. Honoring and welcoming all people. This morning I want to talk about the first one for a few minutes. Extending God's kingdom beyond barrier and boundary. Here is my revelation regarding that part of the plan. We don't need to do that. We don't need to extend God's kingdom beyond barrier and boundary. God does it through us. We just have to be available. We have to be willing to let God enter into our lives, make a difference in people's lives, and push past the boundaries of comfort zone. Push past the boundaries of, I don't have enough time. Push past the boundaries of, I don't have enough money. I don't know enough Bible. I'm not strong enough yet in my faith. And just believe that if God wants to use us to make a difference in somebody's life, then we are good enough. Extending God's kingdom is what we are all about. God's kingdom means that people know that they are loved. God's kingdom means that people know that they are forgiven and they are welcomed back into the family through Jesus Christ. He was not just born into the world, He was born in our lives. We don't need to do that. We just need to be available so that God can do it through us. We need to be available. No one person on a football team wins the game. But if the one person or the other person or that person doesn't do what they are called to do, the team will not win. If everyone is not available to God's kingdom, then barriers and boundaries will be strong. I need you to push through barriers and boundaries. I need you to believe that God will work through your life to extend His plan to the people that you think are too thick-headed to get it. And you need me. And we need each other. If we're going to make a difference in people's lives, we are so much stronger together. So much stronger together. Even where you think you're weak. If God is working through you, maybe your very weakness will be strength to somebody else. Maybe the place where you hurt the most, somebody else needs to know that you can still stand. Maybe the place where you're most vulnerable is a place where God is trying to work in your life. Maybe the barrier and boundary is our unwillingness to be used by God. In Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, when Jesus was talking about the church and the creation of the church, He used these words. I will build my church, and the gates of hell cannot overcome it. I will build my church. Look at the pronouns. I will build my church. It's never our church. It's never about us having all the abilities to build a church. It is about us willing to let God work in our lives, to make a difference in people's lives. It is the Lord's church. It is the Lord's kingdom. We are just available to push out the walls because of His strength. I will build my church. One step at a time. Maybe this is easier than we think. If we take together one step of pushing God's kingdom out into the community, that is going to have more impact than if I just do it alone. Or if you just do it alone. Or if the three of you do it together. If the 20 and 30 and 40 of us decide God's kingdom is going to be pushed out into this Westerville community, and it's going to be pushed out into this Central Ohio community. It's going to be pushed out into the schools. You walk up and down the hallway. We're going to push God's kingdom out because He's going to give us strength to do it. Take a look around in the world. Isn't there a need for God's love and grace where you walk? Isn't there a need for God's love and hope where you go every day? Isn't there a need for people to be forgiven and people to be encouraged and people to be loved where you walk? I don't know about where you walk. Where I walk, all of that is really needed. Because sometimes this is a kind of dark world. And we have God's willingness to work through us. Maybe the barrier and the boundaries aren't out there. Maybe the barrier and the boundaries are here. Maybe it's our hesitancy. Maybe. I know for me, it's often me. I know the biggest barrier and boundary I face to be fully engaged and to try and just be a person that lives an honoring God life. The person that gets into my way the most is the one I see in the mirror. It's the one that you're looking at. And maybe for you, the biggest boundary and barrier maybe is the one you see in the mirror. Maybe that's our hesitancy. So a part of New Song's plan is to just extend God's kingdom. What's God's kingdom? What's that? It's about some hope. Anybody need that? It's about some grace. It's about some forgiveness. It's about strength in the face of adversity. Anybody over here need that? It's about believing that whatever we see ain't all there is. God has called New Song to be about extending, expanding God's kingdom beyond barrier and boundary. Maybe it's more simple than we make it. Sometimes the simplest things really are the right way to go. What's your favorite toy? What's your favorite toy of all time? Tell me. Your coffee pot. That's your favorite addiction, for one. Hey, sister, it's mine too. What's your favorite toy? Anybody else have one?
My train layout.
Train layout. Old train set.
Yeah, a
A big old train set. What's another one?
TV.
TV? Favorite toy? Got a favorite toy? Your bike. You ever heard of Wired magazine? Wired magazine is just like kind of a cutting edge magazine, innovative, really kind of the front end of technologies and so on and so forth. Well, interestingly enough, I got this article a while ago, and Wired magazine did an article on the 5 best toys of all time. The 5 best toys of all time. You ready? Here they are. A stick, a box, some string, a cardboard tube, and some dirt. And they were suggesting this cutting edge, leading edge was that you can have more fun with some of the simplest of stuff. And then they gave this great example that I identify with, and I bet most of you could identify with from last winter, not this winter, last winter. You remember last winter? Some of you are still praying it never happens again. You remember last winter? Well, they gave this example of, you remember when a big snowstorm would come and maybe some lines broke down and you know, the electricity and everything got a little bit chaotic. So what did everybody do? Well, we ran to the store to get bread and milk. And even though we had 4 gallons of milk and 2 loaves of bread, everybody gets bread and milk. I don't know why. Then they said, you lit candles, and you played board games, and it was brutally cold. And it's the truth. Sometimes we look back on that little simple thing, and we think, man, that was a blast. We don't want the freezing cold again. But my memory from that time was when it was like, I think it was like 19 below zero. You remember it was like 19 below zero? And it gets dark at that time of the year about, like 3 in the afternoon, and it's dark, and you're thinking, surely I can't live like this. Well, 6 o'clock, 6:30. I said, boys, come on. We're heading outside. Got in the van, sat on the seats, they cracked. You remember? Took a picture of the dashboard thermometer. Remember, everybody's taking pictures of the dashboard thermometer. Remember, it was 19 below zero. We went out to eat, and we went bowling. I never go bowling. And I remember that, and the boys remember that. Simple. Had a blast. What I'm trying to suggest, what the article was trying to suggest, and the connection I'm trying to make is that maybe extending God's kingdom really is simpler than we think. Maybe it's just living your life honoring God no matter where you go. As a representative of Christ and as a representative of New Song, you just walk into school, you walk home, wherever you go, you just represent. And whatever barrier or boundary you face externally or internally, you say, as Deb said earlier, I trust you, Lord. Even when you're wiping away tears. Even when you have a memory of something painful. I trust you. I trust you, Lord. Begin to conclude here. There was another time when Jesus was talking about his kingdom. He was talking about making a difference. And it was kind of toward his ministry here on earth, and he had gathered people around, he had gathered his followers around, and said, I've taught you all of this so that you have hope. He was like summing up all of this teaching that he had done for 3 years. He said, I've been with you for 3 years. And I've tried to teach you, I've tried to encourage you, and it's time for me to move on. But I've taught you this so that you have hope. And then he gave these words. In this world, you will have difficulty. In this world, you will have times when you just struggle. But take heart, because I've overcome the world. I've moved into the difficult parts of life, and I've moved through them. And you don't do it like that. It ain't going to happen like that. When your heart gets broken, when you struggle with something, when you're unsure which direction to turn, whatever it is, if you've got the formula where you can go through difficulties like that, then you need to be up here teaching, because I can't. But I know that Jesus promised me that He's not only with me, that He will help me get through the difficult junk because He's been through the difficult junk. And I want to follow somebody that's blazed the path. You see, we get caught up in the idea that we need to act like other Christians. We need to be more Christian like them. We need to, here I have news for you. You are not supposed to be like other Christians. We are supposed to be like Christ. New Song is not supposed to be like other churches. We are supposed to be the church He created us to be. You're not supposed to compare yourself. I'm not supposed to compare myself to any other pastor, any other preacher, any other teacher, and neither are you. To compare yourself to any other Christian. But we compare ourselves to Christ. And we ask Him, help me to be more like You. The commercial happened, I don't know if it was 20 years ago, so some of you will not get this reference. But there was a basketball player named Michael Jordan who was okay. And what was the commercial they had at that time? I want to be like Mike. For those of you that don't understand the tremendous athlete that he was, you might not grasp that, but when that commercial came out, people just zeroed in on like that. That's perfect. I want to be like that. Soar through the air. I used to be able to. I want to be like Christ. Because I will have trouble as I try to extend God's purpose beyond me. I will have difficulty. So if I'm more like Him, and He's overcome the difficulties, then I can overcome the difficulties. I think it was on Facebook, there was a kind of an ad from this pastor. He had written a book, and he talked about his goal every year was to have one word that he kind of followed throughout the year, like one action word, one word that he was to be about. And his word for 2014, I believe it was, his word, I thought this was just brilliant. His word was flow. He was going to flow with life, trusting that Christ was with him in that current. Well, whether you like that or not, it got me thinking about, so what could be a word or a phrase for us in this idea of extending God's kingdom beyond barrier and boundary? What could be a phrase? What could be a kind of a catch phrase or word that we could use? And for me, this is what I've decided it is, just for me. Extending God's kingdom beyond barrier and boundary. Deliberate, simple, daily. Deliberate means it's a choice. Simple means I'm not going to get tangled up and tied up in all kinds of methodologies. I'm just going to believe that as Jesus walked through life and touched people and encouraged them, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm not supposed to be here just on Sundays. I'm not supposed to do this kind of stuff just on Sundays. But on Tuesdays when work is really hard, or Thursdays when I'm preparing for a test that I know I haven't really prepared for, or when I'm walking down the hallway and seeing some kid be teased, I'm going to deliberately and simply and daily be like Christ. Maybe it really is that simple. Extending God's kingdom. Maybe it's really not as complicated as we church people tend to make it. So will you join me in this? No matter what you're facing right now, will you join me in this? Will you leave this room today and say, I'm going to extend God's kingdom, no matter what barrier and boundary I face, I'm going to extend it deliberately, simply, daily. Maybe those could be your words for the week, for the month, for the year. To live your faith deliberately. Simply. Daily. Will you join me in that? I invite you to stand for the closing prayer.